going on, guys? It's Greg here. I'm back with another video. I'm going to be talking about shelter during SHTF or Get Home as part of the Get Home series, Urban Survival series. So this video is just going to be a quick video about shelter, my ideas for shelter, where you can find it in a city environment. This is just a continuation of the Urban Survival series and the Get Home series, and I'm just gonna try to give you my opinions on how to seek shelter, what you want to look for when you're finding shelter, why you want to find shelter, and just I'm gonna do a quick list of different shelter ideas that I've come up with, over the years, just thinking about it. So let's just get started then. So I'm going to start with why you want to get shelter. So the reasons you want to get shelter, there's four main reasons, and the first reason is to get rest. That's what most people will think of is, they get tired and they're going to want to get rest. Another reason would be to escape bombs, explosions, gunfire. So like if there was like a nuclear attack or something like that, or something similar. A third reason would be to escape from rioters, looters, and just to get off the streets during unrest or collapse of rule of law. So this would be like, once things get really bad, there's going to be just a lot of chaos on the streets. You're not going to want to be wandering around on the streets. You're going to want to find a safe place, so you can get off the streets and have a safe place to be in. And then the fourth reason would be to seek protection from the elements. So if there's like a blizzard or a hurricane, tornado, something like that, thunderstorm. Well, a thunderstorm's not really that bad, but seek protection from the elements. Criteria for your shelter. The first criteria that I would say for urban, because this is urban survival, so you don't want to spend too much time building anything. You got to leave all the bushcrafting and all that stuff at home. In the city, you don't need to build anything because there's plenty of shelter all around you, and you're just going to waste time. You're going to waste calories. You're going to spend energy unnecessarily. So don't try to be too intricate. Don't be too picky. You're not going to find like a Hilton. You're not going to find a clean place. It's just got to be good enough to where it's going to protect you from people. It's going to, provide a safe location for you to spend the night, or, catch a couple hours of sleep during the day if you're going to be moving at night, which is what I recommend. So don't get too picky. You're gonna have to deal with some dirty places. You may have to sleep in a dumpster. You may have to sleep in some kind of industrial area. It's gonna stink like oil, or it's gonna smell like methane gas or something. Well, you obviously don't want to be near methane, but you'll smell some kind of fumes from the industrial area. So don't be too picky. The key is that it's going to have to be safe. It's good tactical advantage. So another criteria besides, not spending too much time and using environment, another criteria would be that you have to be able to defend yourself from your position, from the shelter that you choose. You want to pick a spot that has the least amount of avenues of approach. So the more avenues of approach, the more chances that, there's more ways that somebody could try to attack you from. So like, for example, if you're seeking shelter in a building, the best place in the building would be in the corner, because in the corner, nobody can like sneak up on you from behind, because you got a wall, to your, on your left, and you got a wall on your right side. You just have to worry about what's in front of you, If you're like in the center of like let's say you're on in a building, if you're in like a room somewhere in the center of like the floor, then you have to worry about, all directions, from the front, from behind, right, left, you're going to be right in the middle. So people can approach you from any angle, and it's going to be very difficult for you to monitor all those different approaches that they could come from, you know. So if you're in a building, you know, go to like a corner, go to the corner of the building, and you know, this way if somebody's coming, they're going to come towards you on your terms. They're not going to be able to sneak up on you. They're going to be coming right at you, and you're going to be in an advantage because you're going to hear them coming, and you're going to be able to, you know, draw your gun on them way ahead of time, you know, versus them sneaking up on you, you know. So that's something to consider. You must be able to defend yourself. It has to be a spot that gives you a tactical advantage. You know, you want to try to get on the high ground. You know, the high ground is always the best. You don't want to be on the low ground. You know, the higher you can get, the better. You know, you obviously don't want to get too high, because if you go too high, then you're not going to be able to escape, which, you know, leads me to another criteria for shelter, is that, you know, you want to be able to make a quick exit. So wherever your shelter is, you know, you're going to have to be able to escape really fast. If, let's say, there's a group of people coming in, let's say there's like a gang of like 5 or 10 guys, and they're going like building to building, or, you know, they're looking around for things to take or whatever. You know, if they run into you, you know, it's going to be hard for you to fight 5 or 10 guys, even if you have a pistol. You know, they may also have weapons, you know. So in that situation, you're going to want to try to escape before you even make contact, and before they even know that you're there. You know, you want to be able to know that they're coming way ahead of time, you know, before you know, before they realize that you're there. And you want to be able to get out and escape, and you know, you want to get out and escape before they know that you're there. So to summarize, the criteria for the shelter is use your environment. That's the first criteria. You know, use your environment. Don't spend too much time building anything. Second criteria is you have to be able to defend yourself from the position. You want to pick a spot that has the least amount of avenues of approach, and you know, you want it to be on your terms. If you have to confront someone, it's going to be on your terms. You know, they're gonna go into your kill zone. You know, it's not the other way around. Then you're gonna want to pick a spot that gives you a tactical advantage, which kind of similar to being able to defend yourself. You know, and you want to occupy the high ground. You know, the higher the better, as long as you can escape. If it's too high, you know, if you're like on a 10th floor of a building, that's not good either, unless you have like rappelling gear, or, you know, paragliding or something like that, you know. But if you're like on the 2nd or 3rd floor, 4th floor, that's good, you know, because you can always climb out of the fire escape. Or, you know, if you have some cordage, you can make like a rope ladder to get, you know, to descend out of the building quickly. You know, you can also use elevator shafts. You can use laundry chutes. You can use ducts. There's a lot of things you can do to escape from, you know, escape from your shelter. I'll discuss that in a different video, by the way. You know, in the movement video. And then the final criteria is, you know, you want to be able to make a quick exit. You know, there has to be a quick exit. You know, whatever location that you pick for your shelter, there has to be a quick way out, you know. So, and then, you know, with that in mind, I'm going to give you my ideas for shelter. And so it's going to start with storm drains and culverts. Storm drains and culverts, they can provide protection from the blast wave of, let's say, like a nuclear bomb or some type of a bomb or explosive device. The culverts, the storm drains, they can protect from the overpressure. You know, they can also protect you from strong winds, you know. So, you know, storm drains and culverts are very good for protection against bombs, because they're very common. You know, culverts, they're very common. You know, if you hear like a bomb siren go off, that's a good place to go in. You know, go under like a storm drain or like some type of a culvert. You know, and it's gonna give you some protection. You know. So then the next thing would be underneath bridges and overpasses. That's pretty common. You know. Pretty common sense, underneath a bridge or an overpass. If you go like right in the corner of the bridge, it's a good spot. It'll block the wind from you. It's hard to see because the beams are very, generally like bridge beams. They're very tall. They're like 3-4 feet tall. The I beams, so like you can actually just be sitting in there, and people won't even see you. And it'll block the wind. It'll block cold winds. Um, it can give you some protection from overpressure and from blast waves as well. Tornadoes, stuff like that. Um, Another one is dumpsters. Obviously that's not very pleasant, going into a dumpster. But a dumpster would be good in a situation where you need to seek quick refuge from, let's say, like a rioting mob or gunfire, or like gangs of looters, like roving looters that are going around. Or if somebody's like trying to hunt you down or track you down. Um, Dumpsters can stop a lot of bullets, especially soft point, like pistol calibers, like 9 millimeters, stuff like that. Because the steel is pretty thick, so typical pistol bullets, they're not going to penetrate through a dumpster. Um, so that's a good place if there's like a lot of gunfire, if suddenly, gunfire erupts, and, if there's like a shootout and you're caught in the crossfire. If there's just total chaos and people are shooting at each other and there's bullets going all over the place, a dumpster is a good place to get some protection, and it's also good from protection from rioters and looters and mobs, marauders, just the general bad people. If they're going to be roaming the streets or something, let's say you get caught up in the streets at night, you're moving home, you're on the way home, and you get caught up in the streets at night, and there's roving gangs, and there's just, all kinds of craziness, all kinds of bad people out there. You're not going to want to be, moving around during that time. You're going to want to lay low. And if you get caught out in the street and, you don't have time to really find a place where you can shelter and seek refuge, a dumpster is a quick, hasty place where you can hide, because a dumpster smells, so it's going to cover your human scent, any kind of body odors that you have, or and it's just not the first place that people are going to be looking. Mobs and rioters and looters, their mindset is focused a lot on stealing and terrorizing, and just doing all that kind of stuff. They're not going to really be, picking through dumpsters. That's more for like homeless people do that. And plus dumpsters smell, so it's just not a common place somebody would look. So that's what I would recommend. And then obviously vehicles, you can seek shelter in vehicles. Even if the vehicle doesn't work, it can give you some shelter. It'll get you out of the elements. So vehicles, obviously, good way to good shelter. Let's see here, sewers and underground tunneling. So like access tunnels for electrical lines or gas lines. There's always, every city has access tunnels, for electrical lines, because they don't have power poles in cities. They have, all the electric goes underground, so they have access tunnels that, lead, that they run those piping, through. Same thing with gas lines. They have natural gas that feeds all the buildings. They have access tunnels for those, so you can get into those tunnels, you can seek shelter down there. It's not going to be a common place for people to go. And also, it's actually, because you're underground, it's going to be warmer. So in the wintertime, it'll be a little bit warmer than the outside. And also it has limited avenues of approach. So there's less chances of you getting surrounded or something like that. And it's just also not a common place where people are going to go. They're not going to think to go into a sewer or into like a conduit access tunnel. So any kind of underground maintenance tunnel or access tunnels for electrical lines or gas lines are very good. And sewers are good as well. Obviously the sewers, there could be some diseases in there, so It's something to keep in mind as well. I wouldn't recommend sewers for everyone. That wouldn't be like my top choice. Especially in the beginning of an SHTF event, because the sewers are still going to have pressure in them. There's still going to be sewage going through. It's really just only like after a little while that let's say like it's a few days after an SHTF event and you're still in the city, then it's good to go in the sewer because the sewage systems are already shut down for a few days and there's not going to be sewage flowing through them. They're going to be relatively clean actually, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Buildings are very good. You can that's common sense. That's probably what most people would do. Building. If you're going to go into a building, you when you don't you want to try to avoid making entry on the bottom, on the first floor, because that's what most people are going to be expecting. If there's somebody inside, they're going to be expecting you to make entry on the first floor, especially like through the front door. That's just like, that's just the dumbest thing you could do. That's why SWAT teams, around the world, when they do operations, they land on the roof of with a helicopter or something like that, because you're at a tactical advantage when you go from the top down, rather than the bottom up. Because if you enter a building from the bottom floor, you got to work your way up, and if there's somebody in the building, they're going to have the advantage over you. Let's say if they're like on the second or third floor and they're looking down the stairwell and you're coming up the stairs, you're going to be at a disadvantage. They're going to hear you coming in. They can just get ready and wait for you to come through, and when you come through, they'll just open up on you. So you want to try to get in through the top somehow. It doesn't have to be the top of the building, but if you can get in through like a second story window or a third story window, if there's a way that you could climb through like a fire escape or climb from a tree, if there's like a tree with a branch you can climb somehow, or you can make like a rope ladder with a grappling hook, or some way that you can get into, at least the second or third floor, and if you have to make entry, you want to make your entry quick. You don't want to, you want to react fast. As soon as you enter the building, you got to be ready for anything. There could be anything inside that building, so you got to be quick. You got to have fast reactions. So that would be my recommendation if you go into a building. And with the buildings, you don't want to be too high in the building, because then you're not going to be able to get out. Unless there's like a fire escape, some kind of like fire escape ladder or something like that, or like a rope ladder. Or if you have like rappelling gear or some pretty strong cordage, you could improvise a rope ladder to get down. But like a second or third floor is good. So, and another thing to keep in mind is industrial areas. Industrial areas are very good because they are sparsely populated. There are many abandoned structures. It's not the first place people will look to go. There could also be resources there. So, industrial areas, there's tons of buildings in industrial areas. There's many of the buildings are often abandoned, because the businesses come in, they go out of business, and the building stays. So that gives you plenty of opportunities for shelter. And industrial areas are not going to be like the first place where people are going to go, where looters are going to go, where criminals are going to go. Industrial areas are generally the last thing that people are going to look for, because there's just not many resources, like as far as food and water go. Now, there could be a lot of other resources in an industrial area. There could be, fuel, there could be tools, there could be parts, there could be raw materials like metals. There could be a lot of things that could be useful in an industrial area. So that's another thing to consider. So I would say that if you mark on your map all the industrial areas in your city, that would be very smart, and familiarize yourself with the industrial areas, scout them out, do some recon, take your car and just drive around. If you pick like a couple of industrial areas that are going to be on your way home, and this way, do some scouting, take a look and see what kind of buildings there are, if there's any good abandoned buildings that could make a good shelter. if there's any, resources in the area, like, fuel, stuff like that. So industrial areas are going to be an unknown gold mine, I think, as far as shelter and some resources. So the basements of large apartment buildings and offices are very sturdy, and have several foot thick reinforced concrete, which can block gamma rays, and foundations are the strongest parts of the buildings. So let's say, like, you get caught in a situation where there's nuclear fallout, or there's some type of bomb, let's say there's like a bomb siren and you have nowhere to go, if you're like in the middle of a downtown area, the basement of buildings, provided that you don't get crushed under the rubble, the basement of buildings is the strongest part of a building, of a structure, especially like apartment buildings. If you ever go into like an apartment building, if it's like a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 story apartment building, 10-story apartment building, you go into the basements, they have very thick concrete, and that could make a very good bomb shelter, especially a fallout shelter, because the concrete, the heavy concrete, that's going to block a lot of gamma rays, and there's also a lot of, generally in those apartment buildings, in the office buildings where let's say they have like a laundry room or something like that, they have maintenance closets. These places, generally the basements of apartment buildings and offices, stuff like that, underground parking garages, they don't have a lot of windows where radiation can penetrate through. Like, in a house, you have your windows in your basement, so if you were to go into your basement, or in a house, like a suburban house or any kind of house, the radiation can get through. It can get through the windows, but in like office buildings and apartment buildings, they don't have any windows in the basements. It's just like, it's like a bunker basically. So it might be smart to familiarize yourself with some offices near where you work, or apartment buildings, places that could potentially provide you some shelter against explosions and fallout. I'm going to go more into that in the nuclear survival and biological chemical survival. I'm going to go in depth about, making a shelter against fallout and the blast, the blast wave. But I just figured I would mention it since it's, shelter video. So, basements of apartment buildings, they're very sturdy, they're very solid. A lot of times there could also be resources there as well, because people store their stuff down there. People that live in the buildings, they store their stuff in the basements, So there could be a lot of resources. There could be blankets, there could be clothing, there could be, mattresses, It may actually be quite comfortable down there. So that's something to consider. There could be various types of, other types of resources. There could be anything in there, because a lot of apartment buildings, that's where people store their things, So that may be a place to go. Also, if we're talking about suburban areas, you can take shelter in a shed. Obviously, if you don't want to just take shelter if somebody's living in the house in their shed, but if the suburban area is already vacated and there's nobody there, let's say people left already, they fled the suburban area and it's empty, a shed is a good, quick, hasty shelter. If you have to get away from like a rioting mob or something like that, a shed is a good place to go. And the roofs of buildings are very good, especially, for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's going to get you off the streets. It's easy to get onto any roof. Roofs are everywhere. Especially in the city, there's fire escape ladders you can climb up, and you can get on the roof, and the roof will also provide a vantage point. You can see what's going on in the city, what's going on around you. So the roof is very good. It'll keep you off the streets, away from rioters, looters, mobs, criminals. It's going to get you off the streets. That's critical. And also it provides a tactical advantage. Obviously, you have the high ground there's limited avenues of approach. If somebody's going to try to get on the roof, you're going to know it. If they're going to try to climb the ladder, you're going to hear it. If they're going to try to get through some type of access door, you're gonna know that. So it's a very good, probably one of the best places to be. Also, on roofs, there's also sometimes puddles of water when it rains because they don't have roofs are flat. And after it rains, you can ask anybody that works on roofs, or if they spend time on roofs, they'll tell you that there's, especially in commercial buildings, there, the water just pools, so you can have a lot of water that you can refill your canteen as long as you, purify it. And let's see if there's anything else about the roofs. Oh yeah, and also you don't want to silhouette yourself. They call it skylining. So if you're on a roof, you're gonna throw a shadow, and you're also gonna have a silhouette. So you don't want to like stand up on the roof. Especially like if there's a moon, if it's like a full moon, and you stand up on the roof, or like you stick your head out or something. People are going to see the outline from far away, from very far away. They're going to see the outline of your body or your head. So you want to stay down, you want to stay low, you want to lay down, and avoid, standing up, and keep mindful of your shadow, especially on a roof, because you're up high, so your shadow is going to be thrown down on the ground so people could see your shadow. And then finally would be, the last idea for a shelter would be maintenance sheds, physical plants, equipment garages, and barns. So this would be like, a maintenance shed for like, tractors or any kind of equipment, stuff like that. Like a barn or something. Especially like a lot of, there could be a lot of maintenance sheds for municipal, grounds crews, where they store all their snow blowers and tractors, stuff like that. That makes a good shelter as well, because it's not, a lot of people they're not going to be trying to, there's nothing for most people are not going to try to go to like a maintenance shed. It's just not the first thought, for somebody, unless they need like gasoline or something like that. But there could also be other resources in the maintenance shed. There could be fuel, there could be tools, there could be, various types of, liquids, various types of chemicals that may be useful for various things. So that's something to consider as well. So I'm just going to quickly summarize everything because it was a lot of information. So the 4 reasons that you would want to get shelter is to get rest, to escape from bombs, explosions, or gunfire, to escape from looters, rioters, and just, criminals during any kind of chaos or unrest, or after the collapse of rule of law, and to seek protection from the elements, from the weather. So those are the four reasons why you would want to seek shelter. The criteria for shelter, the main criteria would be use your environment and don't spend too much time building anything. There's plenty of places in the city for you to, plenty of places to find shelter. You don't have to build anything. Don't spend too much time. You must be able to defend yourself from that shelter position. You want to pick a spot that has the least amount of avenues of approach. You want to have the tactical advantage. Always think about, the tactical advantage. You want to have the high ground, high ground is always better than low ground, and then you want to be able to have a quick exit. You want to be able to get away quickly in case you're overwhelmed, in case there's some kind of, superior force you're going to encounter a superior force. You're going to want to be able to get away quickly, ideally before they even know that you're there. And, you don't want to leave any traces that you were there so they can't track you. And then, the basic ideas that I had was storm drains and culverts, underneath bridges and overpasses, dumpsters for hasty protection against gunfire and rioters, looters, vehicles are also good, sewers and underground maintenance tunnels for electrical or gas piping, buildings industrial areas, sheds, basements of large buildings, roofs of buildings, and maintenance sheds or equipment garages. So those are my ideas for shelter. I hope that you got something positive out of this video. I hope that I made you think a little bit. I hope that you learned something new that maybe you didn't think of. I'm always willing to hear your ideas. If you have some ideas, I would like to hear them. So thank you for watching, and please comment. I would like to hear what your ideas are. Thanks a lot. Bye.